don't understand how wetting the blunt is still happening in 2024 because, yeah.
It's fun to be in the fantasy world, but you also can't run away from reality, because reality will be there every single day that you pump your heart. But as a woman, like, do you have to watch out for sketch dealers? Like, and Kevin was like asking John, like, what's your type? Like, what do you like? Because at this time, I think Kevin is picking up that John likes everybody. And so the dealer leans over and grabs Kevin by the thigh and was like, I like them thick, and like looked at him. And Kevin was like, oh. Kevin was... Well, welcome to Kurious. My name is Cayman, and on today's episode, I'm joined by a guest. I'm going to call her a psychedelic world traveler, and the host of Let's Be Blunt podcast. Let's welcome Cheyenne to the show. Welcome, Cheyenne, to the show. How are you feeling today?
It's been a productive day for sure.
Nice. Okay, so let's start, because I have a lot. I'm very interested in this topic because, this podcast is going to be about drug experiences, stories, ups and downs, things that you want to share, what I want to share. Now, I know a lot of people who are listening to this, they're going to be like, Cayman, like, you don't do drugs. Why are you hosting a show that has drugs? You only do drugs that are backed by big business, which is alcohol. Somehow big business is okay with alcohol. So okay that they have corporate parties surrounded by alcohol, happy hours surrounded by alcohol. But as some of you may know, I have a twin brother who does all types of drugs. So he doesn't work for a 9 to 5. So he can do all the drugs that he wants. So I'm going to be talking about Kevin's experiences doing all these drugs. But yeah, so... I start off every podcast with this question, and I just want to ask you this. It's a good way just to get the ice break. Let's say you have sadly passed away. You took a bad drug from a bad dealer, and you have passed away. Your family and friends are tasked to write an obituary on your behalf. What are some of the things that your family and friends will say about you?
Honestly,
you can keep it real.
Honestly, like, I'm a
Yes,
very
please.
I'm one of those people that my mother has to warn before you meet. I'm that person in the family. So like I think my family would definitely just straight up say, she didn't like many people. And
Okay.
the fact of the matter is that she probably died doing something that she enjoyed. Not saying that getting bad drugs is something that I enjoyed, but I lived a full life and a meaningful life, definitely, for sure.
Yes. Why would your mom have to warn people about you? What do we need to know?
As my podcast states, Let's Be Blunt, I have no filter.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's just because of the predicaments I was raised in, or the people I've been around going to jail, coming back, stuff of that nature. Life's too short, I shouldn't have to filter myself to make you feel acclimated. That's not my duty in the world. So I feel like that's why my mother warns me, because my facial expressions be wild and
Well, can I ask, I know astrological signs are played out, but I still love to ask people that. What is your astrological sign?
I am a Cancer, July 1st, 98. I'm a Cancer.
It's interesting because you said blunt. I don't consider Cancers being blunt. However, I have a couple Cancers in my life. They're the only Pisces and Cancers are the only water signs that I can get along with. I love Cancers because they're so emotional. I had a college roommate, technically. He was a guy, and every single time he broke up with, or a girl broke up with him, because he would never be the one that breaks up, he would just like go on a rampage, like punch holes in the walls and just have a meltdown. He always left every weekend to go hang out with his sister. He was all about like Cancers are just like family oriented, secure with family. They love security, whether it comes with family or money or like food. Something about just abundance of something that makes them feel secured at home is a Cancer. But that emotional side, and I'm a Sagittarius, and some people will say that we're just like cold hearted. So that's why I love a Cancer, because you guys can have all the emotions and we can just sit here and just like, okay. So
male Cancers that I've met are very quick tempered. but they
Yes.
love very hard. So that it makes a little
Yes.
sense of why they're like that. Now you have women cancers that are either outwardly emotional and, like, they'll cry at an
Mhm.
instant, no matter if they're mad, sad, or whatever it
Mhm.
is, they'll cry. And I'm one of
Mhm.
those people that, like,
Mhm.
if I'm quiet, it's usually because either I'm overthinking or cancers
Yeah.
like to plan things. So we like to have our moves
Yeah.
planned out and according I don't like surprises, so I tend to be a little more vocal when I need to be, but most people that know me know, she's quiet
Mhm.
until she has to be kind of person,
Mhm.
for sure.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
the emotional
Do you
for
have any
sure.
siblings?
I do, I have an older brother, he's 29, and then my youngest brother's about to turn 15. So I'm the middle
How
kid
old are
and
you,
little
if you don't
girl.
mind?
I'm 25.
Okay, 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 okay.
Mhm.
Some you give me big sister energy, but I think it's
Yeah.
because you are the only girl.
I'm the only girl, yeah. And I'm the middle kid,
Yes, yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Do you feel like as a middle kid you got ignored a lot?
I would if I was a boy, then I would get that, I would assume. But since I am the only girl, I feel like I had to put that role of taking all responsibility that my mother did not,
Mhm.
or that my father did
Mhm.
not. So I feel like if
Mhm.
I was a boy, though, it'd be a different situation. I feel like I'd be
Mhm.
trying to stand out a little bit more, you know?
Yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I only have, one sister, she's 14 years older than me, and she's a
Okay,
Scorpio, so another water
okay,
sign,
yeah.
but she's very, feisty, I would say
Mhm.
least. So I don't know if it's because we're brothers and sisters that we're just always butting heads,
Oh,
but, let's just say, like, she definitely set the tone for Scorpios, and I have, every time I hear a Scorpio, I just get PTSD.
I've never met a non-feisty Scorpio, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Scorpios and
Yeah.
Leos are those 2 that are very much in your face. Like, you either like them or you
Yes.
don't type people.
Yes, it's funny because I have so many Leos, and I was just talking to someone about this, and I feel like they're two-headed people, like, not people,
Mm,
but a sign.
yes.
Because all of the Leos, like, one of my good friends, Haley's a Leo, and she's just, like, the warmth, like, she's not
Mm,
what you think a Leo is, like, she's not the center of attention, she hates that, she doesn't
yeah.
like she's just not that. However, I have another Leo friend, I won't name her name, but she is wild.
Yeah.
So, I guess they just like you get what you get. I don't know, it's just how the cards dealt when you meet them.
It really depends on the person for real. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, well, let's get started. I wanna ask you some questions.
Yeah,
I was
cool.
just okay, so me and Kevin were hanging out,
Mhm.
and, well, first of all, I wanna start out with this. I think I saw on your Facebook that you, have a daughter, and
Yeah.
it was her birthday today?
Yes, it is. My oldest is turning 6. Shout out to you, Sharady. It's I'm
So, how does that feel to have, your
Ooh,
six-year-old turning 6? Like, that's school age. Like,
yeah, I
how do
know.
you
She
feel?
started kindergarten already, so it's weird because like, it seems so quickly. They go from just barely walking around to now they're coming up with, like, smart ass shit to say back to you, and you're like,
Yes, yes.
"Child, like, what?" And you don't know what to do because you love them so much, but you're like, "Goddamn, like,
Yeah,
shush."
yeah,
But
yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah,
change it
yeah.
for the world. My youngest is, about to be 4 here soon, so it's weird seeing them 2 dynamic, of 2 little girls
Mhm,
trying to love each
mhm,
other, but get annoyed
mhm,
with each other really quickly.
mhm,
It's funny.
mhm, mhm. I know you don't have anything to compare it to, but how is it raising 2 girls?
Honestly, I've seen boy moms, and I've seen them pull out their hair, and I've seen them just lose their shit. Boys, I've noticed, tend to do a lot of shit, like, as far as getting into things or they're messing up stuff, but girls will do the same thing just a little bit more quieter, like, for an example, if my 2 kids are playing with dolls, you won't necessarily hear them fighting until one of them's screaming, you feel me? Boys, you can
Mhm,
hear them rough around and play, you know
mhm,
when something's about to get broken, you're like, "Oh, you're too loud." Girls
mhm,
just break shit,
mhm,
and you're like, "Oh,
mhm,
y'all were so quiet with it,"
mhm.
like, I don't know, I feel like
Yeah.
boys would be fun, but, oh, girls are I'm not looking forward to those teen years by any means.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Yes. I have friends who have girls, and they're as moms, I feel like they're, like, getting anxiety for those teen years, and as
Yeah.
someone who, like I said, has sister and, I mean, obviously I have a mom, but
Mhm.
they were raised in that say we were all in one house, and,
Mhm.
yeah, it got very, very spicy
Oh,
very
yeah, I can
quickly. It was
imagine, yeah.
A rude I know, I don't know what it is. I wonder if men do this because I never
Mhm,
tested my dad in a way.
mhm,
Like, I think I was talking to my therapist about this. I think what happens because my sister was 14 years older than me,
mhm,
that I got to see so much at such a young age
mhm.
that it kinda made me just be like, "I don't have time to deal with this.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
not tough enough to deal with this
Mm,
type of punishment, I guess."
mm.
And then, when I got older, obviously I got in trouble, so obviously I got that punishment, and then I was like, "Wait, this was not supposed to
Yeah,
this was not supposed to go over here, like, I thought you
yeah,
guys were done with this." And they were like, "No, you're getting your ass whooped as well too." And I
yeah,
was just like,
yeah,
"Oh
of
gosh."
course.
So, yeah.
Now I've realized that your sister being a lot younger, my oldest brother's only like maybe 3 years older than me. So like we both got our ass beat together, growing up. And then
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, once he moves out and goes to college, it won't be as bad. No.
Yeah.
Then you realize,
Yeah.
oh, now you're the only one getting your ass beat. Like they have all
Yes.
the time to focus on
Yes.
you. Like it's
Yes.
crazy.
That's very true,
Yeah.
that's very true. I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, she's out, everything's
Yeah.
done."
No.
I said this one time on my podcast too, I remember getting, like I was got in trouble, and I remember going up to my dad and being like, "Can we just, like, talk about it? Like, can we just, like, can I get grounded?" And he was like, "No, like, you're getting your ass whooped." I'm like,
I mean,
"No, I can." And, like, having a podcast, it makes sense because 'cause I'm like, if you could have just talked to me." And you know what? That's just me saying it. Maybe I wouldn't say maybe they did talk to me because I know they didn't,
yeah.
but maybe as a parent, they were just like there was a long stint in,
Mhm.
like, 3rd grade, 4th grade where every single time I got off a punishment, I got right back on. Like, it
Yeah.
was just, like, one after one after one. I will give give 'em that. My grades were shit. Every time teacher would be like, "He's talking back. He can't stop talking. He can't
Mhm.
stop, like, acting up." So I get it, and sometimes I see these TikToks where they're like, "You gotta, like, not beat the fear in your son, but, like, as a
Mhm.
dad, like, not dominate him." I don't like those words, but really
Yeah.
set the tone. Like, set
Mhm.
the tone, like, who is the king, and
Mhm.
some people in the TikTok world says that's very important for men to know that,
Mhm.
like I don't wanna say fear their dad because that just to me sounds too toxic, but
Yeah.
something along those lines, as a dad, you have to do something like that so they can I guess as a guy, you can't go out in the real world just wild and crazy. I don't know, I
Yeah.
haven't really dived too much into this, but
Mhm.
I was just like, "Damn, is that true?" Like, fathers have to really, like, instill that, like,
I don't
"Don't eat the
like
big piece of chicken, bitch."
now that think about it deeply, I don't think it's more of, like, instilling the fear because you know how much easier it would be to effectively communicate? I just feel like it's years of generational of the same process of happening. That's all we
Yes.
really know. I don't know if that's the best
Yes.
solution, like, I definitely beat my kids' ass when they really need it,
Yes.
but it's more of,
Yes.
I think, a trigger in, children's brains that they remember, be like, "Oh, shit, I got my ass beat for that." Maybe that's
Yeah.
not the best option, hopefully, that's the
Yes.
premise of it,
Yes.
but in reality, we have
Yes.
people like I don't know how old you are, but we have people, like,
Yeah.
our age and stuff who look back on it and like, "Damn, they was really just beating
Yeah.
us to beat us, like, that
Yes.
there was
Yeah.
no we learned a
Yeah.
lesson, but, like, it wasn't that wasn't the lesson we learned. We learned, "Oh, now we know how to get rid of things. We had to do things differently
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
learning the lesson of just stopping." You feel me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I sometimes I don't know. I remember I had a cousin who had a very, like, heavy battle with his dad that, like,
Mm.
rippled into the family as drama, and I was just like, "Wow," I don't know, but when I saw the TikTok, like, "Is there truth to this?"
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, like you said, like, that's another thing too when I see my friends' kids, I always put myself in their shoes and like, "Oh, if that would have been me, he would have
Mhm.
been thrown down the stairs." Like, nah, he
Yeah,
wouldn't
for
obviously be
real.
thrown down the stairs, but like if I acted up like that, it would have been done,
Mhm.
And I have to catch myself too because I'm like, not that I would ever do that to anyone's kids, but I do like when I'm seeing them and when I'm interacting, like, oh, if that was me. Like the
Yeah.
other day, my friend who bought her son, who's like 10 years old, 3 cheeseburgers from McDonald's, and she was like, "I know, like, when we grew up, it was like a fry and a chicken nugget."
Yeah,
And I was like, "Absolutely," but
mhm,
she's working on, like, being that parent that she never had, so she was like, "My
mm,
kid's in hockey, he's growing, if he's gonna eat it, like, why don't I give it to him?" Versus being like, "You got food at home, eat more broccoli," and all that stuff, so,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's a hard discussion because, like, you never, especially as a woman, we get a bad stigma of trying to parent other people's kids. And
Yeah.
I have enough time parenting my own kids. I don't give a shit what your kid does, as long as it's not
Yeah.
affecting my child. And I tell people
Yeah.
that, like, when kids be wildin', unless you directly ask for my help and be like, "Hey, what's your opinion?" Imma look at you and let your kid
Mhm.
beat your ass, because it ain't my child, and
Mhm.
it sure as hell wouldn't be my
Mhm.
child. But I'm still gonna look
Mhm.
at you and be like, "If you don't grab that
Mhm.
baby," like,
Mhm. Mhm.
'cause at the
Mhm.
other day, I had a discussion with one of my guy friends today. He said, "Kids put things in their mouths to learn." You have to they
Mhm.
don't
Yep.
know any of this stuff around them. You have to be like, "Hey, this is a
Yes.
cup. This is a dresser. This is what this does." Digress and talk
Yeah.
with them so they make better
Yeah.
choices so then they don't have to run around the house touching everything because they know what everything
Yes.
is, you know?
Yeah. 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 All right. So I want to ask you another question too, because you're a mom who does drugs. First of all, what
Oh, that sounds awful.
drugs have you done?
What
No,
drugs
no, no, no,
have I
no, 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 no. It does not. Let me tell you, it will not go down this awful path. Because I was going to say too, the same friend that I just referenced
mm,
does drugs too.
mm,
And she grows and she does it all. And she
okay.
had to sit her kids down and was like, "Hey," like I remember when her son was like young, she bought a book, taught him about weed.
Mm,
Explained to him about weed, like explained to him what mom does, explained to him the difference between weed and cigarettes, the
mhm,
law, and really got her kids up to speed to now where she feel comfortable to she doesn't do it obviously like in his face, like she'll go to the garage or she'll go
yeah,
outside, but she was like, I need, like, obviously he sees me, like he clearly sees me,
mhm,
so I need to explain it to him. So that's what I was going to lead into is like, have
mhm.
you, what have you done, and as a mom, have you explained it to your kids? Are you ready to explain it to your kids and all that stuff?
I feel like the appropriate age to start really explaining that to your kids is around probably beginning of middle school, really, when they have
Mhm.
the options in their everyday lives, which sounds awful, but at that
Mhm.
point, friends are
Mhm.
really starting to smoke. Friends are really starting to do those things at
Mhm.
the beginning towards
Mhm.
the end of middle school into high school.
Mhm.
So I feel like
Yeah.
that's a discussion you would have around that time. Me
Yeah.
having a weed podcast, and that's kind of my business and my brand.
Yeah.
Um, it's apparent that I smoke. I mean, I smell like smoke.
Yeah.
Everybody knows around
Yes.
me knows what I do. When
Yeah.
it comes to that time, I think the same way that your friend did it would be the best bet, and that's what I would recommend to people as well. Sit them down, be like, "Hey, this is the difference. These are the laws. You should not
Mhm.
partake at until you're a certain age to do so, and then I'd prefer
Mhm.
you do it at
Mhm.
home first,
Mhm.
type deal."
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Me growing up, I started smoking at a young age. I was probably like 11 or 12 when
Mhm.
I started smoking. Um,
Mhm.
and it really just helped me focus more of a sense.
Mhm.
Obviously my father didn't know I was smoking, or if he did, he
Yeah.
didn't bring
Yeah.
it up. He didn't mention it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like it's key to not hide things from your children if you're gonna
Yeah.
do choices of that nature, depending on the drug. Like you said, not blowing it in your kid's face. I know plenty of
Yeah.
people that will ride around the car passing a blunt to a homie while their baby's in the seat next
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't do that to my kid. I have no problem smoking around your
Yeah.
kid because again, that's your kid. But like
Yeah. Yes.
I can't tell you what to do, but at the end of the day, I feel like children shouldn't be around certain grown folks' activities. Drinking around your
Yeah.
homies, your kids shouldn't be
Yeah.
wandering through,
Mhm.
I've done
Mhm.
every drug probably besides like heroin and coke, or no, heroin and crack, if
Mhm.
I'm being honest with you.
Mhm.
So I feel
Mhm.
like when it comes to anything past the level of weed that's not already in
Mhm.
society, it's already everywhere, that's something that you
Mhm.
shouldn't bring around your kids. The coke, the
Mhm.
pills, the
Mhm.
acid, things
Mhm.
of that nature
Mhm.
is really
Mhm.
not something that your kid, I feel like, should be seeing you take often, if at
Mhm.
all.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
opinion, you know?
Yeah. Well, also, I want to make sure you know that I don't. I don't want you to I don't judge moms of all
Mhm,
backgrounds who do drugs that are not backed by big business.
mhm.
So I just want you, because I know I was like, your mom who did drugs, and you had a reaction
Oh,
like, well,
no.
let me, this is not, I'm not shaming
Oh,
you. I'm not,
no.
I was trying to get you to like, share that story because I
Mhm,
have, like I said, I have friends who do the same things they taught their kids.
mhm.
And I think it's just important. I remember when Kevin started. Kevin started when he was like 27. He
Okay,
tried it like later, right now, because we're twins, we're 30. And he started like back like maybe like 5 years ago in 2020, really,
okay.
really like turned that consumption
Yeah.
up a lot.
Mhm,
But yeah, when he started in the very beginning, he was always like high school, he was always around people that smoked and
mhm,
tried it, and like it just didn't work. College too, even post college, he
mhm.
tried it as well. He used to work at an event center,
Okay.
and his security guards would confiscate weed from people who come from the
Mhm.
events.
Yeah.
And then after the event and we're done closing up, we'll just smoke it
Oh,
together.
yeah.
And so he like tried it and it never worked.
Mhm.
But then one of his friends gave him edibles, and ever since he took an edible, he never looked back. And then he
Really?
had a pin, and a pin helped him like learn how to inhale it. And then
Okay.
once he learned how to like actually get in his lungs, um, he like never looked back. But before weed, like in Kevin didn't start doing drugs until college. Like he was
Mhm.
always he was wasted. Like let's just keep it
Yeah,
like call a spade a spade. Man was drunk.
yeah.
And then some of his friends that he still has to this day were, I wouldn't necessarily say dealers, but because they grew up in a more affluent
Mm,
white neighborhood, they
mhm.
had pills on the
Okay.
regular. And now now that me and Kevin are more aware of the drugs, it seems like people who are more rich
Mm,
have pills and all that
yeah.
stuff. So then they started having like Xanax. So
Okay.
he started doing Xanax and like in alcohol. It's probably the only one time he like ever blacked out was on
Oh,
Xanax or
yeah.
alcohol.
Yeah.
And Kevin did not know. He thought he can just take like his shots and like pop a pill, pop a
No.
whole pill. I'll
Yeah.
tell. So he was in a college in freshman year drinking. We both like vodka. He likes vodka. We go to these house parties. So he's never bringing a Coke. So he's always chugging
Yeah.
vodka. At this time, like it's like he has his drinks. He knows it. We used to do like power hour where like every time the Pandora
Mhm.
station changed songs, we'll like take a shot.
Yeah.
So one of his friends were like, "Oh, I got some bars." I didn't know what bars was. He didn't know what bars was
Yeah.
either. And so he took one and like had his shots lined up. And I think he took only like four. And then I remember his roommate was like, he was sitting on his bed,
Yeah.
and his roommate was like in front of him, and he was like, he was, well, both me and Kevin are gay. So he was like, he looked to his roommate, he was like, "Can I see your butt?" And the roommate just laughed and was like, "No, it's okay." And then Kevin was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna rest my eyes." And then the
He's
next morning,
out.
Kevin woke up with dicks all over his face and like doesn't know what happened.
Yeah.
Every like for the entire week, people were like, "Oh my God, you're alive! Like what the fuck?" And they had pictures, they had stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, I to because I'm always about sharing. Kevin has done like alcohol, Xanax, cocaine. Recently, within the past since October, he stumbled on Molly.
Okay.
Right now, he's very into Molly. That's his thing right now.
Mm,
He's learning about it. It's taking his course. Weed. I think that's really about it, and all that other stuff.
okay.
Okay. So all that being said, you said passing the blunt around. I want to ask you a question.
Mm,
Me and Kevin were out this weekend, and we have a mutual friend,
mm,
and this friend also smokes. And we called her up. We said, "Hey, we're outside. Like, do you want to hop in the car?
yeah.
And like let's smoke." And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And so she was like, "Yeah, sure." So he gets there, and he was like, "Hello, I'm here." And she was like, "Oh, I'm bringing my friend that none of us have ever met except for
Mm,
her."
okay.
She's like, "I'm bringing my friend to the car," and he was like, "All right, fine, whatever." So he pulls up, and it's her friend and her boyfriend. So now it's just like two people that Kevin was not prepared for. He only bought
Yeah.
one joint. So they're
Yeah.
sitting in his car, loud as shit, like just loud. They're already drunk. It's just not
Yeah. It's
what he
not it.
thought was going to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then they're like, he lights it, he passes it. And then by the time he gets to it, the boyfriend, like, you know how some people are trying to ash the joint, but then they knock the butt out?
Yes.
And like when they knock the butt out, it kind of knocks out like a lot of the weed. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It just doesn't
Yeah.
knock out. bud. So by the time it was Kevin, me, I don't smoke obviously. So Kevin, his friend, the girlfriend, just four people.
Yeah.
By the time the joint got back to Kevin, it was basically half done. The tip was wet, and now
Yeah.
Kevin's annoyed. So
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. He thinks he's overreacting, but how would you feel? Like, is that overreacting? Like, is there etiquette? Because I know you talked about blunt etiquette.
Yes.
Is that overreacting? Like, how would you feel?
Honestly, since I am that person, I try to be patient, I really do. Because once I
Yeah.
start getting loud and once I start getting, you know, my mouth running, it doesn't stop.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I'm one of those people, there's certain things if you have more than 3 rotate people on rotation, I feel like someone else needs to either supply you with a wrap, needs to supply you with some bud, or have a blunt of themselves. Because at that point, you are smoking with a whole crew. One blunt will maybe get you 2 rotations at that. And that's tragic when you didn't plan for that, you expected a certain amount of high. I don't understand how wetting the blunt is still happening in 2024 because, yo, yo, to be honest with you, if you're wearing I didn't even get on my female friends about this shit. I said, "If you're smoking with me, please do not wear no lip gloss while we're smoking a blunt." So, 1, I don't want sticky, glittery shit all over my blunt, especially with people that wet the blunt. I let it go by twice. If you read it more than twice, Imma look back at you and be like, "You have one more time before I cut you the fuck off." Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I don't care if you're sitting in my car, I will tell them to pass
Yeah.
it over you, because I'll
Yeah.
be damned to have my blunt ruined
Yeah.
because you're just sitting here spitting
Yeah.
on shit, like, for
Yes.
no reason, so,
Yes.
yeah, I
Yes.
don't think he was overreacting in any sort of way.
Yeah. We also have another friend who's black, and, like,
Mhm.
he was talking about how he likes bowls because he's self-conscious that he's going to
Yes.
get the tip wet.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
I guess black people have a stigma of getting the tip wet.
Yes.
Now, me and Kevin smoke a lot because we just grew up in predominantly white people spaces, we have white friends. Let me tell you, those people be coughing on the joint. They be coughing, they be holding the joint with and having a full on Martin
Hobo.
Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech in
Yeah.
their fucking hand.
Yes.
Just holding it like this. And then get the nerve to be like, hold on, chill. When you're asking them to keep it going, like keep it going. And me and Kevin, we both have anxiety, so we're just gonna sit there and just like suffer while you sit there and have like we
I
just
will
watch
not.
the joint just like burn away.
I will not. Like I said, anything more than, like, 3 people, literally I know it's an old phrase, but people puff, puff, pass. I might give you 3
Yes.
puffs at most,
Yes.
and they better not be no
Yes.
Godzilla ass shit either,
Yes.
like, come
Yeah.
on now, like,
Yeah.
keep the flow
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
I feel that way,
Yeah.
I'm not really a talker, but I definitely know those people that will talk to the whole or go on a rant and start swinging the blunt, and now the whole blunt's out,
Yes.
and you're like,
Yes. Rolling in the car with the windows down, wind blowing. I'm like, bro, we either pull the windows up, turn the AC off,
"Yeah,
but you can't be sitting here and have the windows down and us driving 90 miles per hour. Like it's just
no,
like give me my joint back. Yeah, I feel you. I always yeah, it's just and I told my friend too after that, I texted him too after that story I told you about how we're passing it and they
yeah,
knocked the butt off and all that stuff. I'm like, bro, don't sit here and get
yeah,
self-conscious because you think that your lips are going to wet it when me and you both hang out with white people. I don't know about his white people, but the ones that not all the ones, but some of them
mm,
be like hacking lungs and like sitting
yeah,
there tell you. And for me, I hang out, Kevin hangs out with one of his good friends, and if he's like trying to tell a story, like it's more important for him to get his feelings across or whatever, he will just tell you to hold it. Like skip him, he doesn't have the
yeah,
time right now. Just hold it, and then when I'm done, I'll just
I do
resume
too,
later.
yeah,
But if he will be that person that will sit here because it's more important for him to like talk to you than to smoke. It's so hard when you're like emotionally diarrhea to also sit and hit the blunt because you
yes,
might cough and shit, and you're like, I can't. So
yeah,
yeah, to Kevin, he will let you hold it until he's done or until he feels like he can puff pass.
mhm,
But yeah, I was just like, what is I just I yeah,
no,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
cannot,
and I hate when people Kevin hangs out with a group of people who primarily smokes, right?
uh-huh,
So whenever we go to these like family or not family, like friendcations or friend barbecues,
mhm,
mostly everyone is going to
Yeah.
provide something.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm just so used to that to
Yeah.
then where like to that situation I was talking to you about, the girl was like, "Oh, thank God I needed that." Like, "Oh my God, I can't believe we didn't or so and so didn't bring anything." I'm like, "If you needed that, why didn't you bring it? Like,
Yeah.
why didn't you bring you're sitting here acting like it saved your night, which means to me you do this on a regular.
Mhm.
You should have brought something." Like, I don't know. I
No.
Kevin, now that he does weed, he doesn't go anywhere without smoking weed, or he doesn't go
Okay.
anywhere without at least bringing it.
That's
So
nice.
yeah,
I'm the same way,
yeah.
I don't necessarily roll papers anymore per se because
Mhm,
it's hard to pass, like, if I'm gonna roll with
mhm,
other people, if I'm doing a podcast, I try to avoid
mhm,
backwoods entirely because 'cause I'm not putting no eighth in a
mhm.
backwood. I know dudes that will roll
Yes,
the whole bag of weed now they use the whole bag of weed on one blunt,
yes,
and I'm like,
yes,
"No,
yes.
bro.
Yeah,
No."
yeah,
There's so many
yeah,
better ways to
yeah.
do that. I've gotten into bongs a lot more recently, like, I haven't really used bongs
Mhm,
since, like, high school. But when it
mhm,
comes to, I guess, saving weed and using it for the best, like dabs almost,
mhm.
you get the most out of it. Um,
I thought I saw on your pocket you haven't done dabs.
no, I haven't. I did something kinda similar with the wax, but I wouldn't say it's a full dab 'cause I did half of it and then I died, and, like, for the rest of 30 minutes, I was coughing up a
Oh,
lung.
yeah,
I was like,
absolutely. Yep,
That's good.
yep,
That is stay on
yep,
that."
yep, yep.
I would like to try again for sure,
Kevin,
but mm.
say it again.
I said I would love to try again for sure, but it's at that point, it's like, I don't have the pen for it, I gotta buy a pen, I gotta buy, like, all the shit that goes with dabs, you know?
Yep, yep.
Mm.
Yeah, when Kevin did it the first time, felt like someone literally just took a piece of his lung and just, like, ripped it off
Yeah,
him. He was coughing for, like, 30 minutes, but
he
when
was
he was done
done.
I feel like when you're coughing, when you're smoking, you're coughing, I feel like it just really enhances
It does.
that smoke, like, so when you're dabbing, it's like all that air and oxygen is just really good giving
Mm,
so they went to a movie, they walked to a movie theater, he he walked to the movie theater. He sat in the movie theater. He apparently watched it, but then 6 months later, he was like, "Why do I feel like I've seen this movie before?" Because it came on
yeah.
Netflix, and then he was like, "Oh, this is a movie that I was on Dabs for. That's why I couldn't remember it." And that's how strong it is.
Yeah, no, of
And then
course.
he got into it for a long time, but he realizes he doesn't like bongs. Like he doesn't really like
Mm,
glass things.
okay,
Rolling joints is his like favorite.
gotcha.
He hates bongs. It's just like so cumbersome. It looks so weird.
Mm,
I think just holding it, something about holding it is just very comforting for him in
okay.
like the rolling process.
Mm.
Although he doesn't know how to make his own, he has a joint roller,
Oh,
but you
really?
know, it is what it is.
Yes, I can't
Yeah.
like, papers and stuff of that nature is not it's just too flimsy. I'm really
Yeah.
new into
Yeah.
the rolling, I've always had a person or someone to roll my blunts for me.
Yeah.
So me getting into rolling, it's taken my time and patience, but I actually do enjoy doing it. If I got a
Yeah.
good Dutch or, a white owl or swisher of that nature,
Yeah.
I'll be cool rolling
Mhm.
it, but
Mhm.
I don't know, I thought about getting a joint roller, that way for podcasts, I can just,
Yes.
roll it, keep it pushing. Um,
Yes. Yes.
Soon though.
As like a female, a woman, a lady,
Mm.
have you had like any weird? Do you? I know women who smoke who don't pick up. They send their
Mm,
boyfriends to do. Even if their boyfriends don't smoke, they
mm,
send their boyfriends to go pick up or their husbands to go pick up. Like they never
okay.
do that. Do you? And I know we are talking or on your pod before you had like dealer stories. I have or Kevin has a great dealer story for you. But as a woman, like, do you have to watch out for sketch dealers? Like,
Mm,
do they like, yo, give me some box, I'll give you some free weed? Like,
oh, yeah.
what is that like?
So every dealer is different. A lot of dealers I deal with are a little bit older. I don't necessarily like,
Mhm,
dealing with younger people because younger dealers I've noticed be on their own time. So I've had
mhm,
dealers maybe wait 5 to 30 minutes before in the car, waiting for them
mhm,
to even possibly show up at their house, and I don't have the
mhm.
patience for that. So I try to
Yeah.
stay with older dealers. Now the only thing about I would say older being 35 to 38 range, okay?
Mhm,
They are quick to being a female, they're quick to be like, "Hey, I'll give you a little extra, if you do whatever for me," you feel me? You
mhm,
could take me
Mhm.
a meal, or you could just,
Mhm.
cuddle me in bed, I'll give you an extra. And at the end of the day, like, to me, weed isn't that serious. Like, I can wait, bro,
Yes.
or I could find someone else.
Yes.
I've been in
Yes.
plenty of situations where, because I do get my own weed, I prefer to do that. I'm one of those people that bring a scale with me, because if
Yeah.
I'm gonna weigh it out in front of you, if you're shorting me and we both see you're shorting me,
Yeah.
now you're gonna give
Yeah.
me extra weed because you're trying to make me
Yeah.
seem like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So,
Yeah.
I would say any female that wants to start getting their own weed themselves, definitely bring a pepper spray, definitely bring a knife of something with you, just so you feel more protected. I
Mhm.
wouldn't recommend going into any plug's house, unless you've
Mhm.
known them for a little bit, got a couple things from them. When it
Mhm.
comes to any plug though, I would say the given rule is, unless they really want you in their house, most plugs will not. They might smoke a blunt with you, which I think
Mhm.
is important. So I feel like if a plug
Mhm.
doesn't smoke a blunt with you, they won't even smoke their own product. That's a little weird to me.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think it's important when
Mhm.
you're talking about females. There's nothing wrong with a guy getting your weed. I just feel like
Mhm.
men take a long time because, once a man gets a weed, they'll probably sit there and play the game. Others sit there and
Yes.
talk. Like, you're not getting half
Yes.
your weed's gone now by the time it gets back. You don't even wanna
Yes.
smoke, you're tired. Like, I'm just gonna get my shit
Yes.
myself. I've been thinking about getting into growing though. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
Being here in Chicago, it's a little more difficult as far as what you can grow and the abundance and where you can
Yeah.
grow it at.
Yeah.
But I'm looking into it 'cause I think that would be more lucrative as opposed to dealing with motherfuckers when I can get the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
quality myself every time, or mostly every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, for Kevin, I guess as a guy, we never had those problems. I do agree. There's sometimes I think the Molly dealer that he used now he smoked a joint with them because I think for Kevin it's nice to just for him he can learn a lot through a
Yes.
conversation. He can learn a lot through one joint. He knows if this is going to be a good one or not. Just like those
Mhm.
people in the car, he was like, I can tell that these are friends of friends. Like I don't
Yeah,
necessarily need them as friends, or Kevin can tell that.
exactly.
But let me tell you a story that for talking about the at first it's funny that you said that a dealer was like, let me cook a meal or like cook a meal for me.
Yeah.
I don't understand when men, I don't get it. It must be something that they like. Cause I remember there was this like TikTok and they're like, what guys, what can a girl do for you that's like not a blowjob, but equivalent to it? And a lot of them were like, just cook me a meal. And I'm like,
Yes.
okay, I guess like you just want scrambled eggs and some toast, like that will
Mhm.
really like set it off.
Yeah,
But
thanks,
yeah,
man. I don't
we
understand.
there's this. So Kevin used to use this dealer for weed. He found it through a friend of a friend,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like a friend's brother. So
Okay.
a different friend and his brother. Now I don't know. Let's call this dealer John. I don't know what John's sexuality is, but he's very not a straight, typical straight man. I would say
Mhm.
that. So one day Kevin was in the car and they always meet in a parking lot and pick it up. And Kevin was like asking John, like, what's your type? Like, what do you like? Because at this time, I think Kevin is picking up that John likes everybody.
Mhm.
And so the dealer leans over and grabs Kevin by the thigh and was like, I like them thick, and like looked at him.
Hey,
And
yo.
Kevin was like, oh. Kevin was like, okay, like, how do I? So John has a brother that this is how they met because through that friend this is John's brother.
Yeah.
John's brother has a wedding, so they all show up and John would be there. Kevin was there. I was there. And John got a little bit too drunk and just
Mhm.
couldn't keep his hand, like touching him on the shoulders, touching him on his thighs,
Mhm.
making him like, come dance with me, come do this, this, and this. And it just really put a bad taste in Kevin's mouth because he was like, this is weird. Like, I just want to pick up weed from you and keep it cute and keep
Yeah.
it moving. Now I feel like you're going to short me. And if I don't give you cheeks, you're not going to give me the rest back. Like, this is super awkward.
Yeah.
So, I think because Kevin also just has a hard time, just like, I guess, not standing up for himself, but just like just letting an awkward moment, like, be an awkward moment, like, if I gotta get touched, fine, like, just give me my weed kind of a way, but,
Mhm,
like, now he has moved on and found a different one. At that time,
mhm,
John's weed was giving Kevin a really bad headache, and he
mhm.
couldn't figure out why,
Yeah.
so he just stopped buying from him.
Mhm.
But, yeah, that was one of the stories when I was listening to your podcast about dealer stories. I was like, "Ooh, I gotta tell her this one
Oh,
'cause,
yeah.
Kevin kept he had a dealer that was, like, too handsy."
Like, oh, yeah, I've dealt with people that, will deal in front of their children, which
Mhm. Mm.
I can't tell somebody if that's your whole hustle, that's your whole existence,
Yeah.
that's your thing. I feel like children should be
Yeah.
able to have a fresh, clean slate no matter what the upbringing is, which I know is a little hard to say
Yeah.
depending on the culture you're raised or the dynamics that you're
Mhm.
raised in. It's kinda hard to sometimes get
Mhm.
above the struggle, but it's
Mhm.
definitely a step not dealing in front of your kids, that's the first step of,
Mhm.
above
Yeah.
the struggle. Um,
Yes.
I
Yes.
I feel like when it comes to drugs of coke, I would say acid or tabs and mushrooms, things that really even Molly, things that really change your outward perspective.
Yes.
I feel like
Yes.
it's hard to find proper dealers for those things.
Yeah.
Like, you just
Yeah.
kinda take a chance, and if it's good, it's good.
Yes.
Kinda with pills,
Yeah.
you're having a really hard time with fentanyl pills nowadays, like, a lot of
Yep.
fentanyl is getting mixed into things, and it's fucking up the way drugs are looked at and trying to legalize
Yes.
marijuana a little bit faster, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I feel like it's crazy because once you talk about legalization of marijuana, now you have all these other drug people are like, "What about my drug? Like, mine's not
Yes.
that bad."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like,
Yes. Yeah.
mhm,
I am I I would like all drugs to be decriminalized. I
all
am one of
drugs?
those people that I think all drugs. I really do. I think it's up to the person. I've seen Kevin do like now he's on Molly. And he's testing it out. He's trying to figure out what it's like for him. He's
Mhm.
taking different doses. He's communicating to his therapist. One time he had a really bad trip in the middle of a concert
Oof,
and was just standing there and was like, "What do I do? Do I just sit here and cry or do I walk away? Like I can't."
yeah,
And then obviously, like I just told you, he's not going to make someone uncomfortable. So now he's sitting here around his friends, like, do I walk away? Then I got to explain that. Do I cry? Then I explain that. Then I
yeah,
ruin their day. So what he did was he like looked at the clock. He only had 30 minutes left. So he just like kind of sucked it up.
mhm,
He was telling himself, I think what happened was Molly's to him is a drug that helps him not feel loved, but
mhm,
feel the love that is around.
yeah,
Feel like now he's going to EDM concerts, right?
okay,
So it's very colorful, it's LGBT friendly, it's
mhm,
diverse friendly.
mhm,
When you go to certain genres of music, it's the people are friendly. I'm not saying the rest are not, but like there's just a lot of friendly, fun,
yes,
open-minded space, and he loves that. So Molly's a drug that also amplifies that.
mhm,
So then when you're sitting on Saturday night and you're like, well, technically it's Sunday night, which means we have to go back to work on Monday, he then starts being like, fuck, I want to be in this moment. And then that's
mhm,
when he's like, okay, we gotta stop that thought. Cause that's where addiction starts. You
yeah,
can't get obsessed with the fantasy that some drugs provide you.
mhm,
It's a kind of like a balance. You have to, it's fun to be in the fantasy world, but
mhm,
you also can't run away from reality because
yeah,
reality will be there every single day that you pump your heart. Reality would be
yes.
there. I think that is a lesson that he had to learn. Have you had those moments too? Like,
Oh
what kind
god,
of
yeah.
lessons have you learned when you were on these different types of drugs?
So, I'm a Buddhist, so I often meditate, and
Ooh,
I try to keep
okay.
my self aligned because I feel like once you're aligned with yourself, it really helps you
Yes.
align with others properly. The
Yes.
key phrase,
Yes.
"Loving yourself first," is really true. You can't jump into things trying to love other people when you're
Yes.
not fulfilled in
Yes.
yourself. So when it comes to drugs, I feel like that's the same way. A lot of people will say, all you gotta do to avoid a bad trip is, think happy thoughts.
Yeah.
That's really not
Yes.
factual. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you can think happy thoughts, but your brain is always turning. Especially when
Yes.
you're taking drugs that make you see things that are not necessarily
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I would say for keeping a good active mind is already having things planned. Sitting at
Yeah.
home by yourself taking these drugs it's not for everybody, that's for damn sure.
No.
Like, it
No.
takes a very special person to be able to trip on, like, let's say DMT and sit in their
Mhm.
house and not do shit.
Mhm.
I'm one of those people that if
Mhm.
I'm fully activated, like you're saying, um, going to a concert, being surrounded by
Mhm.
happiness, um,
Mhm.
even if it's for a little bit of the time that you're on these drugs is key. Um,
Mhm.
some people, when they smoke weed, don't like driving. I'm one of those people that I really like to drive. I like listening to
Mhm.
my music and feeling the air and being
Mhm.
correct, like,
Mhm.
how do I phrase this? Being aware of what's around you. You can obviously see there's a
Mhm.
tree outside, but to really sit
Mhm.
there and be like, "Damn, this tree grew.
Mhm.
The bark is different."
Mhm.
Like, to
Yep.
actually have mindfulness while you do these
Yeah.
things is key.
Yeah.
Just taking a
Yeah.
drug just to take a drug to escape isn't the purpose, I feel like, of some drugs. I feel like if you're
Yeah.
not actively engaging with the world around you, there's you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you know?
Yes. I love that you said that. I think that really puts what Kevin does. It's like it's a enhancer to he's always a social butterfly anyway,
Mhm.
so it's just like a cherry on top, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
it helps him, like it just helps, like and and going back to, like, having a good mindset in that tree analogy, that's the reason why I think I want all drugs to be legalized. Because when Kevin does mushrooms with his friends, that's one thing that they talk about is just like it's just like that realization. It's kinda like the woke culture, and that's
Mhm.
kinda what it feels like. You're opening your third eye, especially with mushrooms. It's been very therapeutic for Kevin,
Yeah.
and because he was sit there was one time that him and his friend did mushrooms. They were up at 2 a.m. in the morning. They were dressed in sweatpants and stuff. They were in her backyard. At any fucking time, a neighbor coulda came out and be like, "Who is in this backyard?"
Yeah.
Like, I know these neighbors. They wouldn't be out here in the backyard like this, and could have called the cops. And we were talking about that, how just like that slight different perception could have been
Mhm.
like a change. And
Yeah.
then they didn't know, like, the owner of the house is in the trampoline, like that's the owner of the house.
Mhm.
And so we were just talking about how technically we're not that different. And Kanye West at that time was going through this whole Nazi thing, and
Oh,
like
yeah.
we are like, we're not that different than homeless people, really. Like, we're just like a moment away, or like, like, people can perceive you, those neighbors could have perceived us as hooligans
Mhm.
when, and if the lights were on, like the daylight was on, they would have been like, oh, that's the neighbor, the real neighbor that owns that
Mhm.
house, and that's her friend who comes over almost twice a week.
Yeah.
But in a different setting, it would be like, who are these hooligans? Let me
Yeah.
call the cops.
Exactly.
So I say that because there's so many moments where I'm like, I am no different than the rest of the world. It's just how people are perceived. And
Mhm.
then one time we did it in the broad daylight, which is one of Kevin's best mushroom trips. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
so great. And we always come to a conclusion that we, not that we live in a shitty world, but like what you said about that tree, like really just being like, damn, like that tree fucking grew. Or like when you're sitting there on a mushroom trip and you're lost in your psychedelic world and the wind kind of just brushes past your toes,
Mhm.
you're like, oh fuck, I'm alive.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
there's, and the birds just chirp in your ear. You're like, oh fuck, there's like beautiful music that can keep me going. That's
Mhm.
what I wish people will understand and get when I say legalize drugs. So I feel like if like the people who like are politicians, right? Or,
Mhm.
I don't know, however you vote, but whatever, like people who are in control of the world can just sit down and be like, this tree, like this wind, like we need to protect this, or we need, or I'm no different than this person. And even when Kevin goes with his Molly group, they
Mhm.
always sit around. They're always doing drugs. So they're always like sitting around smoking a joint, and people are just be like, one of his friends are like, you know what? We're
Yeah.
just trying to make it right in this world. And that is what I want. Like, that's the reason why I want to legalize, because I assume that people will have those moments, those moments of realizations, those moments of connecting. I think those are the lessons that Kevin has learned throughout his drug
Mhm.
journey.
Like, I often tell people, and they hear it often on my podcast because I'm reiterating it so much. I tell people, I said, "Yo,
Yeah,
we are floating on a rock in space."
absolutely.
And I said,
Absolutely.
"You have to realize, like, I'm not thinking about normal things. Like, I'm not over here like, 'Damn, I gotta pay these bills.' Like, that's a parent. That's
Hmm.
always going through your
Hmm.
mind." I said, "Take the
Hmm.
time if you're actually gonna do drugs and do them properly, take the time
Hmm.
to relax your brain and think about nonsense.
Hmm.
Not even nonsense, but,
Yes.
like, something that's out of your norm. and you'll be astounded on how much your
Yes.
creativity rises, how much
Yes.
your wonder for the world rises, how much you really want to figure out and achieve all things regarding life, as opposed to, "Damn, I just gotta go to work, I gotta pay my bills, I gotta do this, I gotta do that." Like, it's okay. We
Yeah.
There's far more worse things that we could fall out of space right now.
Yes.
Like, there's far worse things
Yeah.
that could happen
Yes.
than you
Yeah.
taking a break from your everyday life, you know?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think that's what Kevin was saying. It's just like it's and he just had a God, he just had a therapy session with his therapist and he was trying to tell him all his Molly journey and his therapist was like one of his friends was like, "Do you have addiction in the family? Like maybe you should try going out one day without Molly and stuff like that," which he values his friend's opinions because it
Yeah.
keeps him in check. And so then he goes to his therapist because he values his therapist
Mhm.
opinions because it keeps him in check. So Kevin was like, he told his story, and Kevin was like, "Yeah." Then I said, "I have a therapist. That's her job to keep me in check." And the therapist was like, "Oh, well, I feel like I've been trying to tell you to like blah 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 blah." And Kevin was like, "Hold up, no, you have not. Like,
Yeah.
no, you have not. I'm waiting for you to tell me, or Kevin's waiting for you to tell him that he is losing control."
Mm.
So he had like this real moment, like, "Am I losing control? Like, he just feel like he's just having fun." And then he went to his friend. I think his therapist is trying to teach him that what drugs pulls out of Kevin,
Mm.
he doesn't need drugs to do that. Like
Yeah.
it's all within him.
Mm.
And he doesn't need the Molly to feel the rave 2000 fantasy, you
Yeah.
know, his like go-go boy fantasy. You can feel that fantasy on your own.
Mhm.
But one thing one of his friends, good friends told him, she was like, "Yeah, but when you're sober, you deal with the anxiety, you
Mm.
deal with the body dysmorphia, you deal with all this, that, and that." So it's kind of like a balance. Like, yes, Kevin can be the great Kevin that his therapist wants him to be
Mhm.
without the
Yeah.
drugs, and he is. But sober him has to deal with the trauma and the baggage of the world. So it's
Mm.
not going to come off as the same as if he pops Molly and then he's like, "Great, I can forget about the baggage for this 4
Exactly.
hours and just be a character."
Mm.
But I think, yeah, I can't remember. I often just go on these little blurbs and forget my point. So if I
No,
just
you're
start
fine.
speaking and forget my point, that
No,
like
you're fine.
that was so I just wanted to say that. But yeah. So what are if you can do a drug for the rest of your life, no consequences, there's
Mhm.
no side effects, but the catch is you can't do any other drugs because that will fuck you up. You can only do one, no consequences, but you can't do any other drug. Which one would it be?
That's a hard one because instantly in my head, I went to Coke
Yeah.
because it keeps me awake and it keeps me moving, it keeps
Mhm.
me always processing in my
Mhm.
head. Um,
Mhm.
but I love smoking weed. I love the different
Mhm.
kinds. There's so many different kinds. I'm not a big edible
Mhm.
person. I make edibles for
Mhm.
people, but I don't like the feeling of not knowing when it's gonna hit, you know? When I smoke a
Mm.
blunt, I
Mhm.
know I'm gonna get
Yeah.
high right then and
Yeah.
there. I don't gotta worry
Yeah.
about it. You take an edible
Yes.
and next thing you know you're sweating and you're like
Yes.
trying to breathe and
Yes.
shit. I don't like that.
Yes.
So I enjoy Coke for casual purposes. I feel like it would be if I didn't have any consequences as far as like, nosebleeds or your nose always hurting and shit like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
it would be a good experience. I know I have a homegirl of mine who does about 5 tabs of acid a day.
Jesus
But
Christ.
she's been doing that shit since high school. So, like, at this point, that's just her brain, you feel me?
Yes.
Her brain is
Yes.
completely wired differently. She could drive, she could fully
Yeah.
function, but you tell
Yes.
people 5 tabs of acid, and they look at you like,
Yeah.
"How is this bitch living?"
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
But I
Yes.
guess when your
Yes.
body gets accustomed to any drug, it's a part of your life now. Like, if she stopped
Yeah.
taking acid, I couldn't imagine how she would function, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
At that point, it's
Yeah.
more than just an enjoyment thing, it's like popping an Adderall. It's kind of
Yeah.
part of your lifestyle now. That's why
Yeah.
bars and opioids are so dangerous because you can
Mhm.
easily ingest a bar or snort any pill
Mhm.
and take a drink like you were saying earlier
Mhm.
and take too
Mhm.
many and not realize, how certain drinks react with certain pills. Not taking
Mhm.
time to research the items, you just popping it 'cause your friend's like, "Here, pop this."
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
our
Mhm.
generation
Yeah.
needs to stop doing that, and our culture needs to stop doing that. A lot of rappers
Yeah.
promote that. A lot of rappers, talk about popping pills or doing this and doing that and
Yeah.
drinking, when it's like, if you're gonna talk about drugs, talk about them in a safe way. If you're gonna pop pills,
Yeah.
everybody knows you shouldn't drink and pop pills, you feel me?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
but the newer generation getting hearing these things, like, it's fucking up the drug stigmas that are around, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think for Kevin thinks about this all the time. First of all, he doesn't do any one thing he's proud of. The only drug he can do by himself is smoking. Like he's
Yeah,
never been a drinker by himself. Like
I'm the same way.
if he's by himself for like months, there's no events, he's not doing Molly. Like he's just
Mhm.
smoking weed.
Yeah.
Um, Cocaine and Adderall does not do anything for him. He just feels like is a waste. Like he has friends that will be like, "Come over, let's watch the MMA fight and do cocaine." Like he doesn't want to do that. Like and there has to be like high energy in the space.
Mhm.
Just sitting around, just bros being bros, smoking coke is not worth it for him because like one time he was at a wedding and they just did coke and Adderall all night. That's fine. We're at a wedding. We're
Yeah,
gonna,
we're
let's party.
yeah.
But it still doesn't like Molly, weed, mushrooms. I think they just affect him differently than I mean, I guess it's clear as day they affect him differently. Cocaine is a whole different
Yeah.
drug. But when he's doing coke, he's just like, what am I supposed to feel? Like what am I supposed to get out of this? I'm not feeling
Mhm.
anything. He always describes it as if someone just turned the lights on too bright. Like everything just seems super bright to him.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I don't like this. I want like darkness. I want like temptation in the air. I don't want to be
Mm,
wired in like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
I think he would have said mushrooms, but I think now that he's been bitten by the Molly drug, I think right now he's probably going to say Molly.
Mhm.
Um, do you think when you do acid or mushrooms or any of these drugs,
Mm.
do you complement them with smoking weed? Like if you're doing a mushroom trip, are you smoking weed?
No. I would say mushrooms,
Interesting.
acid, tabs of that nature, I tend to do by themselves because depending on the potency or depending what's happening, I like to be somewhat aware. I always like to be
Yeah.
alert, and that's a little bit
Yeah.
difficult for me when because I have bad focus. That's a little bit difficult for me when I
Yes.
do those things. I'm anemic, so I make sure I always eat before I do any. I make
Mhm.
sure I always
Mhm.
hydrate fluently throughout.
Mhm.
For people
Mhm.
that are wanting to do, like, acid and things of that nature, definitely don't do it by yourself the first time, like, I don't recommend
Mhm.
people doing that. Make sure you have a good trip
Mhm.
sitter, because the wrong trip
Mhm.
sitter could really fuck your whole
Mhm.
experience, like,
Yes.
and that's tragic.
Yes.
I
Yes.
would say when you go towards the cocaine, route, I definitely smoke a blunt. I would even sometimes roll cocaine in my blunts to make it
Oh,
evened out. I know, to make it
wow.
evened out if I'm gonna do it, I guess, you know? But I really, I don't recommend as far as, like, mushrooms and things of that nature, smoking it for me personally.
Yeah.
Um, but I've definitely seen people do it. I've definitely seen,
Yeah.
like, Xanax, I'll do a blunt with. Um
Yeah.
Things that I know I've had multiple times and I know what their effects are combined. I don't ever recommend a psychedelic though, adding more shit to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
drinking on a psychedelic, like, probably not the best
Yeah.
idea,
No.
but, like,
No,
because 'cause you're
no.
just doing too much at that point.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. This is a whole a good reason why I started podcasting because you just never know. Everyone's story is different. Like with
Mhm.
Kevin, he has to smoke weed while on Molly and while on
Okay.
mushrooms. It's not an option, but because he's so much in his head
Mhm.
that I think with mushrooms for Kevin, I feel like mushrooms is trying to teach him to let go. Like just
Mhm.
let go and give in. Because I feel like with Kevin, if he is too in his head and he's thinking too much, he's controlling the trip too much, it
Mhm.
just like fights with him.
Yeah.
So if he smokes a joint, it kind of just shuts him off and then he can actually feel it.
Okay.
And also like when he's on Molly and he feels like the Molly's coming down, all he has to do is just take a couple puffs and then he's right back into it.
Yeah.
But no alcohol. That's another reason why he loves Molly's because he just holds water in his hand,
Yeah.
although he spills it all over himself.
Yeah.
He just doesn't feel the need to drink. New Year's, he went a little too crazy. He took a little bit too big of a dose of Molly. He was drinking all night. He was smoking
Mhm.
weed all night, and he realized like, ooh, I'm just a little bit too sloppy. I'm not. Molly to him, he has a hard time just holding on to things. Like, he's
Gotcha.
always holding on things with his fingers, so, like, if someone's
Sure.
bumping into him, like, water spilling all the time, right? He lost his ID, so he
Mm,
just was like, "Okay, I'm getting a little," or he's getting a little too sloppy. But yeah, that's the reason why he likes mushrooms and mollies, because it's just weed, that drug, and water. And he always,
mhm.
especially mushrooms, he can't do mushrooms in public. He
Oh,
can't
yeah,
do them with
no.
people he don't know.
I
He
can't
has to
either.
do them with friends.
Mhm.
And yeah, some of his friends will go out to these EDM concerts on mushrooms,
I
and I'm
can
just
remember.
like, how are you not having a Dr. Phil Oprah moment in your head right now? Like, I am trying to like figure out my mental scars, go back to the time my
Yeah.
dad yelled at me, try to like talk to my younger self, like
Mhm.
cry. Sometimes when he's on mushrooms, he just wants to sit in silence. Let's like sit in silence or sit on his balcony.
Mm,
I can't imagine him going to a concert like that.
mm-mm.
So
Like,
yeah,
mushrooms, yeah, I'm definitely a sit-at-home person for sure. The only
yeah,
thing I've really gone out other than, like, smoking weed or coke, I did
yeah.
acid for a long time in high school, so I'd obviously have to go to
Mm-hmm.
class and fully function and shit like
Mm-hmm.
that. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's the only time I wouldn't mind concerts, I'm more of a media person, so I'd rather
Mhm,
sit at home and watch a
mhm.
good movie or a
Yes,
good
yes,
documentary while I'm high, you
yes.
know? Um
Yeah,
I'm like I said, I'm a planner, I'm a Cancer, I like to have all my
yeah,
shit lined, so if I know Imma do
yes,
shit like that, Imma make sure I have food coming so I don't have to go too far
yes.
out, like, things of that
Yeah,
nature. Just really knowing
yeah,
yourself, doing the research, like, don't just
yeah,
take a dose, not knowing your body weight and how much that
yeah.
really potency really
Mhm.
is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I wanna be respectful of your time. We're at an
Yeah,
hour. I feel like we haven't even, like, got to the surface. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, so we might have
whatever.
to do a part 2 on
Okay,
your show.
definitely.
But I wanna wrap up with one thing.
Yeah.
I love that you're talking about being more self-aware
Mhm,
like, you're anemic, plan, have your food. I think that is very important. That's one
mhm.
thing Kevin has learned, especially when he's going to an EDM concert with his friend. He was like, I can't camp. Like, I
Yeah,
can't do
no.
drugs in camp. Like,
Mm-mm.
I need to be in a hotel. I need
Mhm.
water. Like, we're gonna have water. I
Yeah,
need food. We're gonna have food. So he's like, these are the things that I need in order for me to go from 2 to 2 a.m.
yeah.
and then plan it. Like, he's not going to do Molly all day long. He's going to have to plan it at a certain time. He's not
Mhm.
going to drink all day long. He has to plan it at a certain time. So I really, I like that, because I think it's very important. And as Kevin did it earlier, later in his life, he
Mhm.
realized how important it is to be prepared and make your body prepare.
Yeah.
But my last question is for you. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned that you think that if people are starting that they need to embark? And it could be a
Mm.
personal one that you wish that someone told you, but what's
Yeah.
like, I feel like drug people get such a bad stigma, but when I
No.
talk to drug people, they learn so fucking much. So
Yeah.
what is something that you've learned with all the drugs that you've taken that you wish other people would know?
I would say if if when you go to buy drugs, it's really key to me that to read a room. I wish
Yeah.
me buying drugs at a younger age, I really was hanging around people that are much older than me, much more
Mhm.
doing a lot different things than I was at that age. So you
Mhm.
have to when you get into a room, make sure you're aware of who's around you. You see the status of
Mhm.
people, how high they really are,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
what other drugs are usually around them. Because people that do drugs don't normally stick to one drug. Like we've been mentioning
Mhm.
different ones. So making sure
Mhm.
that your stuff is not laced, like if
Mhm.
taking care of who's around you,
Mhm.
your exits, stuff of that nature, just
Mhm.
common, I guess I
Mhm.
would say common sense. But
Yeah.
people that are really starting to get into that, do your research, make sure you know, like I said, what's mixing and what's not mixing, things of that
Yeah.
nature. Because even though not all drugs are bad, not all drugs are good either, A
Yes.
lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
stuff made at houses that shouldn't be made at houses, a lot of stuff that's getting cut
Right.
with different things like cocaine, they can obviously cut
Mhm.
it with anything almost that's white.
Mhm.
So you could have
Mhm. Mhm.
fentanyl to baby powder in your shit.
Mhm. I was
So
about to say baby
you
powder.
gotta you gotta really
Yeah.
know who you're talking to, know what your limits are, and always have I wanna say if you're going by yourself, make sure you tell people where you are. Make sure you
Yes.
have a close friend. You don't gotta tell your whole family on Facebook, "Yeah, I'm about to go do some fucking Molly." Like, you
Yes.
don't gotta tell everybody, but make sure you have
Yeah.
one person that be like, "Hey, I'm doing this drug. if I call you for every reason, like, I
Yes.
need you to
Yeah.
come get me type shit, like, on that level,
Yeah.
I feel like would be my advice for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I
Mhm.
love that. Well, thank you.
Of
Thank you
course.
for joining. Thank you for taking the risk and just hopping on my
Oh,
podcast and
yeah,
talking to me.
of course.
I had a blast.
Mhm.
I forgot to I will send you a text. I know you asked me about recording and stuff. I thought we would
Mhm.
have time today, but I'll send you a text of like what I use and
Perfect.
all that stuff. And feel free to send me more questions if you have any
Yeah.
more. But yeah, if you ever want me on the pod, just let's link our schedules up and
Oh,
I'll
definitely.
make sure Kevin is here. Kevin can join us.
Yeah.
He can finally sit down. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So
Of
thank you so
course.
much.
Thank you so much for having me, and definitely will be in contact as far as getting on my podcast and all things of that shit
Yes.
too.
Yes. I'll link all your stuff down below so people can follow you.
Perfect, perfect. Sounds good.
Perfect. Cool.